What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Um, I wasn't really gonna make any kind of video tonight, but it got to a point where I was kind of sitting around thinking about things, and I told myself, "Well, fuck it, let's just go ahead and do it." So this will probably be another one of those kinds of videos where I ramble about a bunch of unrelated shit as I'm sitting here scrolling around my Rimworld base. But I've got some stuff I need to talk about, man. Even if it's just talking to the fucking internet. So let's see here. Where should I even start? So today was one of those kinds of days for me. To kind of give you some context here. When was it, man? I think I moved into the place that I'm living at right now as a renter. I think it was back in like 2013, if I remember right. And during the time of moving in, the car that I had at the time, it was I think it was a 2006 Mustang convertible. Excuse me. And at the time, man, that fucking car was the love of my life. I loved that goddamn thing. But after like, I don't know, after having been here at the where I am now as a renter for maybe, I don't know, like a year maybe, the car began to kind of develop some weird noises that were emanating from the engine bay. And it seemed to only happen whenever I would be driving the car at really, really low RPMs. Well, I had it looked at by a local Ford dealership after having it for a day or two, and apparently after they scoped it, they realized that the number one cylinder was beginning to go out, and if I were you, I would sell the car as soon as possible. Jesus, it's not as if that's giving me any kind of hope. So it was ironic or uncanny because at that same time, I also began to notice that the transmission that the car had was also beginning to, I think, go out. In retrospect, I realized that it was beginning to go out because there would be a couple times when you would put it in reverse and it just wouldn't take. So, anyway, after getting that bad news, I began to put feelers out. One thing led to another, got a different car. But the car that I wound up getting or replacing the Mustang with, it's a 2000, what is it? A 2008 Saturn Sky. It's basically a two-seater convertible. It's a really, really beautiful, cool-looking little cute car. And it's the kind of car, man, that I don't know how this is going to come across because I'm not this kind of guy that tries to be a pretentious prick, and tries to snub his nose at everyone around him or anything like that. But this kind of car, to start with, they don't make these cars anymore. Any car gurus out there that are hearing this, they'll know that the Saturn Sky is a discontinued make and model, and it's not really the kind of car that you want to like drive in winter weather. Okay, so as soon as I got that car, I told myself, man, we got to get a used pickup truck. Nothing super fancy or anything like that, because at the time, with me spending the money that I had at the time on that car, to say nothing about the house that I had a mortgage on at the time, I was doing everything I could to kind of mitigate additional expenses. But at the time, I had enough money to where I could kind of throw a little bit of cash at a used truck as long as it was within reason. And so one thing led to another. Started looking for trucks online, and I came across a 2006 Chevy Colorado that was for sale up in Lafayette. Well, I wound up buying that thing. I bought it at the time for, I think it was about 7 grand, and at the time it had about, I think, 86,000 miles on it or something like that. But after I took it for a quick spin to test it out and everything, everything seemed normal. It was perfectly fine. So needless to say, I bought the thing, took it home, and then at that point I had two vehicles. I had the Saturn Sky and I had the Chevy Colorado. Well, after about the first year or maybe second year of owning this the Colorado. We had a bad winter one year, and I stupidly got myself caught in my own fucking driveway. And I did that thing where you try to put yourself in forward and reverse to try to kind of get myself out of the hole. And in turn, I think what I did was is I burnt up this thing that they refer to as a sun. What do they call it? A sun gear. I think is it. I think it is. And I think that's essentially the thing that's responsible for being able to get in reverse. Looks like we got a seam here. So anyway, I couldn't put the damn thing in reverse after like a month from doing that, because there was one morning when I was at home and I tried to go out and get a cup of coffee at a local cafe, and I was able to drive there, put it into park, come back out with my coffee, put the thing in drive, come home. But as soon as I'm up to my home's driveway, I'm one of those guys that likes to kind of reverse into his garage. And so as soon as I got in front of my driveway, I pulled the truck up just enough to be able to put it in reverse. And as soon as I put it in reverse, I realized that it wasn't going in reverse. I was like, oh, fuck, man. So I had to like arrange a thing to where I had to go and get a new fucking transmission. And bear in mind, again, this was like back in 20, I don't know, man, 2014 at this point, maybe 2014, 2015, somewhere around there. The transmission that I bought was from basically this company called Jasper Transmissions and Engines, and they're pretty popular for their transmissions, uh, not so much for their engines. But the transmission I've had since then, it was replaced. I think I replaced it at the time for about maybe $1,200 or something like that. Which, I mean, for a transmission, that's actually a pretty damn good price when you think about it. Because usually, at least back in the old days, meaning like, I don't know, early 90s, maybe somewhere around there, transmissions were an arm and a leg. And I mean, don't get me wrong, they can still be an arm and a leg, but at least for my make and model of truck, that cost for a new transmission was awesome. So anyway, I've had that transmission in there ever since, and the um, that was probably the second biggest expense I've had in the truck ever since buying it. The latest biggest expense was this newer remanufactured engine that's in there now. And once the dust all settled, it was a little over 10 grand to get that fucking thing in there. And I'm talking bear in mind it wasn't just the engine block. I mean, we're talking about like not only the engine block, but a new starter, a new radiator, a new power steering pump. Did I say radiator? I think I did. Um, but also new engine mounts. And sometime a little after that was installed, I also had some new injectors installed too, because I realized stupidly after the fact that apparently the new block didn't come with new injectors, which you would have assumed that it would have, because because it already came with things like a new timing chain assembly and new spark plugs and all sorts of a new water pump, all sorts of other stuff. So you would have assumed that it would have also come with new fucking injectors, but it didn't. And I managed to get a really good deal on the injectors, because there was one day when I was in there for something else and I realized that the asshats running the fucking shop forgot to turn off their heater, and I told the guy at the front desk, I was like, hey man, did you know that your heater's on? It's over there by the fucking shades. And he's like, no, I didn't. And I was like, I hope that gets me a free service. And he was like, oh, it'll get you more than that. And through one way or another, I managed to kind of conflate that into some new injectors. I mean, I still had to pay for them, but they gave me a really awesome discount on it. And I mean, I'm sitting here kind of bad mouthing the shop, but for the most part, the guys at this shop that I'm talking about, they're pretty good guys. But anyway, got the new engine in and stuff like that, and I think the new engine that I've got now, or at least the remanufactured engine that it has now, it's got about maybe 37,000 miles on it, somewhere around there. I don't know, 30 something, I think. I've had it for about what? maybe a couple years now, year and a half, I don't know. But ever since day one of picking the fucking thing up, man, from having the new engine installed, it's just been a goddamn nightmare. And I finally got it to a point, I think, this past spring, where it seemed like everything was beginning to kind of calm down. And I don't know if it was just because of some of the work that I had the guys do during some of my numerous return trips of having to have things like timing chains fucked with and stuff like that, or if it was just general break-in, because whenever you install a new engine, you have to go through a period where you got to break it in for a while. I don't completely understand the science behind it. I know that some of it has to do with things like, wearing certain kinds of oil ring tolerances down enough to where the oil flows in enough but doesn't get lost in the motions of the pistons and things like that. And I know that there's a lot of stuff in there in terms of tolerances of various shafts, like the cam shafts or the crankshafts. So I mean, there are actual legitimate things that are involved with break-in periods when it comes to new engines. But the thing is, though, is that again, I've got now about 30 some odd thousand miles on it, and still to this day, I'm still experiencing issues that no shop seems to be competent or willing enough to take on. The biggest thing that I've experienced with this new goddamned engine are these weird startup issues where you'll put the damn thing into on. You'll put the key into the thing and turn it to on. And what I've grown to do is I'll turn it to on and let the fuel pump kick on just long enough to kind of prime the fuel rail. And then once I've done that for a couple seconds, then I'll turn the key to the ignition position to make the engine begin to kind of crank and hopefully start or turn over. Well, one thing I've noticed about this engine or the make and model of vehicle, whatever, is that whenever it gets cold outside, the damned engine has more problems turning over in general or just starting. The fucking thing just struggles, man. I don't know what it is. What will normally happen though is that if if the if the stuff aligns the way that it needs to in order for these things to happen, what will happen is I'll put the key into the ignition, I'll turn the key to the on position, let the fuel rail prime, and then after a couple seconds, I'll let the computer ignite the engine or try to crank it by simply flicking the key to the ignition switch, but then just let go of the key. And by doing that, you allow the computer to handle the ignition sequence. It handles the starter. The starter cranks the whatchamacallit on the backside of the engine, and then after that point, hopefully everything just ignites and takes on from there mechanically. Well, the thing with this make and model or this engine is that whenever it gets cold, or else if the truck hasn't been started for a certain amount of time, what can sometimes happen is if you put the key to the ignition position and try to let the computer start the truck up, sometimes what will happen is that the old radio that I have in the truck, the head unit will just kind of die. It, the radio won't play. It'll just kind of like it comes across as if the power is off on the radio head unit. You won't see the radio station, the glow of the numbers and all that kind of stuff. It'll just kind of die. The truck is still operational though, and this is where it gets weird. So the radio head will die off, and then at that point, the truck, it starts to try to crank, and if everything's at least at a point where it can start, it'll go ahead and start. But during the initial like 5 to 10 seconds worth of startup sequence, what will happen is that the engine will crank up to about, I don't know, man. I don't know exactly what the exact RPMs are, but it'll do the initial routine where it starts up, revs up enough to warm the engine up to a certain extent, and then it'll begin to kind of fade down to what I call the idle RPM range, which with my make and model of vehicle, it when it calms down, it's anywhere between 1,000 and I think 800 RPMs. But if the confluence of events is aligned the way the moon's aligned, what will happen is that sometimes what will happen if it's either been cold or hasn't started for a certain amount of time, once it gets down or close to that RPM range where it's idling, something happens in the engine where it just fucking drops. It's like the floor drops out from under it, and it acts as if it's going to stall out for a moment or two. And it tries to, unless you wind up putting your foot on the gas to try to push out some gas, I guess, uh, into the boreholes of the engine so that it can all ignite better. I've had that issue ever since I got the new engine. You hardly ever see it during warm months because, like, for example, this past year, from spring all the way into late fall, this damn truck engine was perfectly fine. It started up perfectly fine, it ran perfectly fine, and it was almost never exhibiting any kind of symptom that would make you think that there might be something wrong with it or anything. And I don't know if some of that is because of some of the return trips that I had to make before then to the shop that installed the engine, because when I first got this engine installed, there were numerous return trips to the shop to kind of refine how they apparently installed timing chains or some shit, because they had to get into the timing, uh, the 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 uh, the timing, they had to open up the timing cover to get into all of the timing assembly components, because there were numerous times when they swapped out different timing guides and tensioners and shit. And I don't know for the life of me how that could have happened with a remanufactured engine. And this goes back to what I initially said early on about how Jasper transmission and engines, they apparently are known for having good transmissions, but are also apparently known for having shoddy remanufactured engines. And unfortunately for me, with my make and model of vehicle, GM no longer produces the type of engine that it came with whenever it was brand new. And as a result, I was forced to have to use something, otherwise I was going to be forced to get a new fucking truck. So I went ahead and went the route of getting one of these remanufactured engines, and again, I just didn't have any other option. Well, despite all of the stuff that I've gone through since getting that new engine installed with the timing chain shit and, other things, that I think it was last winter I had some serious work done through warranty of the engine, because back then I still had a warranty on the engine. And during that time, not only did they replace another tensioner, I think it was, with the timing chain assembly, but they also replaced a cam phaser, which is basically a sprocket that's on the passenger side of the uh, camshaft or drive shaft. Okay, it's basically one of the main sprockets that's responsible for, I guess, I don't know, timing the cam lobes of the overhead cam system or drive shaft or camshaft, I mean. And with my make and model of vehicle, sometimes whenever you're doing a timing chain assembly swap, you have to get in there into the cam phaser and swap that out too, because somehow I think that's somewhat responsible for distribution of oil throughout the camshaft stuff, all the camshaft assembly stuff. So they went ahead and did that, and again, I think this was last winter, and ever since then, man, it's really been running like a sewing machine. I mean, it's just been almost flawless. It began to feel like a brand new fucking engine, the kind of feeling that you get when you can turn the goddamn key on and know that you've got a good, reliable fucking vehicle. Well, for the past couple days up here in Indiana, man, we've had some really, really cold weather. I think on average it's been between, I don't know, man, somewhere between like maybe 15 degrees and maybe 25 to 30 degrees, somewhere around there. And I think some of this is because we're currently going through a little bit of a cold front. I mean, needless to say, it's December, so obviously we're going to be colder than normal. But from what I understand from some of the forecasts and weather and stuff like that, they're making it sound as if this is mostly like a cold front beyond just normal winter weather. Because sometimes anymore up here in Indiana, at least where I am, up in basically the Terre Haute area, um, December anymore I mean, it's not really rare to see a day every so often in December that might get all the way up into the upper 40s. And I've always told my friends and family, I was like, if this is global warming, I say put another fucking log on the fire. But but here this past week though, because of this cold front or whatever, it's been pretty cold. Well, like I said early on, whenever I first got the engine installed, there would be this constant startup issue where it would do that weird RPM thing at the beginning, and it would literally sound like your engine's about to kind of like just collapse in on itself until you put on the gas. Because when you put on the gas, it would kind of even out, and after about 10 seconds of that or so, you could kind of gradually let off the gas, and everything would just kind of even out. I don't know what the fuck it is that's causing that, and I have had this goddamn thing looked at by multiple shops. I even had a goddamn gold star mechanic at GM, an actual like gold rated mechanic, or they refer to them nowadays as techs, look at this thing for like multiple weeks, and none of them have been able to figure out what causes it. And it literally got to a point where the gold mechanic at the GM dealership eventually got to a point where he was like, "Look, dude, I don't know what's going on with this thing, but I'm not going to do any more major engine work on this." Because I was getting to a point where I was wanting him to like not only take the valve train off, but go all the way down to the head to take it off, so that he might be able to get visualization of the boreholes in oil rings and everything else that's really down into the nitty gritty of a block. Because I was just desperate to just get it fixed. I at the time I was just not giving a I didn't give two shits in a whirlwind how much it was going to cost, because at the time, and still today, I have enough money to where I can throw some shit at stuff like this one way or another, and either get the fucking thing fixed or just get a brand new goddamn truck entirely. But he didn't want to mess with it, man, because he had worked with Jasper engines and transmissions before, and he doesn't have anything good to say about any of them, and he just didn't want to mess with it. And unfortunately for me, the manager of their shop also didn't was basically coming to bat for him, so I was just kind of screwed. I'll take a drink here real quick. So anyway, I've had this engine looked at by multiple different mechanics, and they've all said things like, well, it's operating to spec, and, everything from what we're seeing, everything's perfectly fine, so just keep an eye on it. The same fucking shit that everyone winds up telling a customer who's irate that they can't solve the problems of. so, so anyway, the last visit I made to the shop that installed the engine, they installed the cam phaser thing, and I don't know, man. I think they swapped out another tensioner in the timing chain assembly, and ever since then it's been working fine. Well, this past week, cooler temperatures, been pretty fucking cold outside, and it starts exhibiting that same startup thing. And I'm thinking to myself, well, okay, I know how to deal with this. I can just step on the gas and it'll eventually even out. No big deal. That happens a couple days in a row. And then today I come out of the office that I work at like 4:35, somewhere around there. Go out to my truck, try to start her up, and she doesn't fucking turn over. You can hear her crank, and she just doesn't want to turn over. No idea what the hell's going on. No fucking clue whatsoever. There's no check engine light. As far as the computer is concerned, everything's fucking hunky-dory, because I even carry around with me literally one of those little ODB2 scanners because I've gotten to a point where I think I basically have PTSD from all of these kinds of engine issues that I've had in my life. And as a result, it's kind of trained me to do everything I know how to do to be as prepared as possible for these kinds of calamities. Because at a bare minimum, if I can at least connect an ODB2 scanner to my vehicle's ODB2 port, I can at least have an idea about why it's not wanting to be nice to me. So, but no check engine light, this time. No idea what's going on. And I just sit there literally out in my parking lot, constantly trying to restart it or trying to ignite it from the key. That goes on for about 15 or 20 minutes. And eventually, out of nowhere, it just fucking starts up. I'm thinking to myself, what in the fuck is going on? And during that same time of going through that, I noticed that the radio, the head unit of my radio was dead. It was having a hard time staying on or something. So I don't know what to expect out of this goddamn truck, man. I mean, it's been kind of a quest of mine for the past, I don't know how many years now, about 2 years, I guess, ever since getting that new engine. But tomorrow I'm going to go into my local Advanced Auto Parts to see if they've got an upgrade for for a battery that will fit my truck, because the battery that I've got right now, it's got like I think it's rated for 650 cold crank amps, and I know for a fact, and by the way, this is further reinforced by my discussions with ChatGPT. I guess whenever it gets cold outside, regardless of whatever your battery's rated for in terms of cold crank amps, there's a certain percentage of the cold crank amps that gets deteriorated the colder it gets outside. And 650, I mean, that's not a very high amount of cold crank amps, especially for colder climates or at least colder weather. And so the idea that ChatGPT kind of threw at me was that a likely scenario is that you just need a better battery, or at least one that's not maybe as worn or used as the one that I might have now, because the one that I have now, it's a stereotypical what is it? I think it's like an 86G or group size, I think it is. And it's got 650 cold crank amps. I don't know what the reserve time is on it, because batteries come with a reserve time factor. I don't fucking ask me what it means, but I think it has something to do with how much time a battery can have after it's been zapped or something like that. But anyway, 650 cold crank amps. It's a stereotypical AC Delco, nothing fancy really. But I've had it for basically at least a couple years, and maybe even 3 winters. And so ChatGPT at least made it sound as if, that's at the prime time where a battery begins to need to be replaced. And it laid out all sorts of things, like the fact that I've been noticing my head unit on my radio going dead, and the fact that I still had power but wasn't able to make the engine turn over. Um, and the fact that obviously it's colder outside, because again, for the past week it's been between 15 and 25 degrees on average. And and considering the fact that it was working flawlessly from this past spring, excuse me, this past spring all the way into late fall, it's kind of a giveaway that it's uncanny how everything's beginning to kind of deteriorate suddenly as it's freezing outside. So it suggested that I just go ahead and try to find a way to upgrade my battery with higher cold crank amps, and one maybe a type of battery that might, like an AGP type battery, I guess, that can handle colder weather better. So I think I'm going to go ahead and try that tomorrow. I'm going to go into my local Advanced Auto Parts and see if they've got anything that fits the bill for my form factor of my battery, and that will work the way that I'm hoping it will. But the reason I wanted to also make a video today is just because, I've mentioned before how I'm kind of in the process of looking for a different job, because right now I'm currently employed. I work for a local university as a programmer analyst. I do IT work. I basically kind of like what's a good way to explain what I do, man? So most institutions, organizations, businesses, and so forth, a lot of them are using what they refer to as enterprise applications. And these enterprise applications, they have to have things done to them to be usable. Start with, you've got to create accounts for them so that users can access and use the damn things. But you also have to do things like sometimes integrate one system to another, share data, to configure certain kinds of artifacts within each product so that it can actually be used in the ways that it's supposed to be used, like reports or surveys or fucking whatever, man. I mean, there's a billion different kinds of ways that some of these products sell themselves. Well, I'm the kind of guy that basically does all of that kind of shit for this place that I'm working at. And for the most part, I actually kind of enjoy what I do. I mean, it's there contrary to what a lot of people believe, there really never is a dull moment in IT work. I mean, I know that the stereotypical depiction of an IT guy is some kid, that's got dorky glasses, or like what CNN loves to make you think. There's some shadowy kid in a in a fucking hoodie, that's sitting there in a dark room hacking away at your social security number or some shit. It's not really the way it works in the real world, man, or at least not from everything I've seen. You're really just a stereotypical office worker that's sitting there in front of a computer making accounts for people or possibly troubleshooting certain kinds of things that might be going on with a respective product. So I mean, it's not really, I would say like maybe it might be 80% monotonous work that can sometimes still be somewhat entertaining depending on what it is that you're doing, with the remaining 10% sometimes being the level of hardcore type stuff that you might sometimes see in a movie. Like if you've got some asshole that's sitting there trying to break into a system, you might have access to certain kinds of security features of the respective product that allows you to pinpoint their IP range and then block them. Or maybe you need to track down what accounts they're using because you've caught wind by your supervisor that that person's getting ready to get terminated, so you need to lock up their accounts. Some of this shit's really been stuff that's actually happened to me. And on a personal front, I've kind of been involved in some serious stuff with my personal website where I uncovered basically what I think was a bot farm. I mean, there were numerous nodes, for example, that were originating from places like Central America and Germany and so on, that had TCP ports open that you could access with your web browser. And then once you accessed it, for whatever reasons, the endpoints weren't secured. And this literally happened to me, by the way. This happened back in, like, I think it was maybe 20. When was it? I think it was back in 2012, before I moved into this place that I'm living at now. I was up at night surfing the internet, and I was checking my access logs to my website, and I saw some hits by some IP address that was constantly trying to probe basically for exploitable endpoints on my website. And so one thing led to another. I had some tools installed on my computer that I was going to use to basically see what I could see about this IP address, because what I did was I can't remember what the tool was, man, but it allowed me to take the IP address and basically do some port scans and things like that. Excuse me. And so I took the IP address and I scanned it, and I saw that it had some open or accessible TCP IP ports or TCP ports. And so I took some of those ports and appended them to the IP address in my web browser, and I accessed an endpoint that showed basically what I think was some sort of automated routine that was basically taking some payload files that had all sorts of different endpoints in the text files that constituted the payload files, and was essentially iterating through each endpoint of the endpoints in the text file to perform brute force attacks against the endpoints. So in other words, what I'm trying to explain here is that the website that I was able to access, it looked like an interface of some program that was taking in a text file to use as ammo, which the text file, the ammo of which was basically website addresses, and it was iterating through all of those, and per each iteration using a different text file to try different brute force combinations of usernames and passwords. And what was really weird about this, whatever this was, is that you could basically control the entire interface, because on the same page that this stuff was running on, it had controls on it that allowed you to turn it off, or to maybe select different files and things like that. And I tried numerous times to turn it off, but it didn't. I don't know, man. I think it was automated in some way, shape, or form, and it just wouldn't stop. So I had to kind of block it at my website and handle it that way. But like I said, though, contrary to popular belief, there really isn't a dull moment whenever it comes to IT stuff. And I mean, I tell you, I've seen some really, really interesting stuff in the, I don't know, what's it been now, about 25 to 30 years now of time that I've spent as an IT worker. Some of it's been with my own personal stuff. A lot of it's been at work. But some stuff that's changing though in the IT industry right now is that you've got obviously a lot of stuff going on right now about AI and automation and things like that. But part of that coincides with cloud-based offerings. And like I said earlier, most organizations and stuff, they use these things that they refer to as enterprise applications. And 9 times out of 10, an enterprise application is going to be something that's in the cloud. It's going to be something that is basically hosted or installed on a system that's maybe that might be like 5 or 6 states away or something like that in some data center, and you basically administrate it remotely from your office in Indiana or wherever through an admin account or some type of thing like that, and your stereotypical users will be given accounts that you create for them, and from that they'll be able to use the application. And you'll essentially be the gatekeeper of determining when somebody has an account or doesn't, or might have to have a thing disabled, and so on and so forth. Well, one thing that's changing a lot right now in terms of IT is the fact that um, you've got a lot of these organizations and so on that are not only trying to use things like AI and whatnot to mess with the stuff, but you've got a lot of people in leadership roles that are trying to instinctively opt for things like cloud-based this or AI-based that over doing things that are homebrewed or developed in-house. And normally there's not really much that's wrong with taking the approach of doing something either in the cloud or maybe using AI to kind of assist in certain kinds of things. But the thing that I'm seeing, at least on the landscape that I work within, is the fact that a lot of these people that are in leadership roles, it's almost as if they're not even considering whether something should be done in house or not. It's like they're immediately assuming that it has to be done either in the cloud or some AI thing has to immediately be used over even considering whether or not you have people on staff that can handle a thing, doing something in house. And the problem that I'm seeing from that is the fact that you're beginning to have leadership that are complacent and allowing stupid stuff to happen that normally wouldn't happen. They jump the gun and immediately subscribe to licensing structures that they shouldn't be subscribing to or buying. And it's creating kind of a toxic workplace as a result, because you wind up having these leadership people that aren't paying attention to the management 101 types of things. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, the reason I'm kind of keeping my feelers open to other opportunities is because I want to try to find an employer, whether it be a big business or a small mom and pop type of thing, that would give me the opportunity to be able to kind of evade a lot of this kind of mess, and to be able to come into work, put in 7, 8 hours, and then just go home and forget about everything, and not have to, not have to stew over something that someone said, or be pissed off at some sort of favoritism type stuff. Got some people here fighting. Let's see what's going on here. I just want to be able to go home and not worry about stuff, you know. I'm not expecting to be some sort of guy that gets paid millions of dollars to do a thing. I'm generally content with how much money I make right now. God damn it. Okay, since you put him down, you need to rescue him. That's what I usually try to do. Anymore, man, I try to let these guys just fight it out. That way you don't have to suffer the 6 or 7 days it takes for them to get over the fact that they get arrested or something like that. So anyway, because of some of these kinds of things that are more or less industry wide rather than just my employer, it's it's caused a lot of problems in my mind in terms of things that I'm seeing uh, take place where I work. There's favoritism that's been going on. There's a little bit of corruption that's been going on. Manipulation, lies, deception, you know, a lot of nasty things. And it's been kind of like this ever since COVID. I think COVID sparked a lot of it because we just never really got past the whole remote mess that COVID created a lot of employers. And there's been also a lot of persisting animosity in terms of employers that tried to coerce or force things like those vaccine shots. So I mean, looking at it from a sense of timeline, ever since COVID happened, there's been already some sort of there was always some sort of snowball type thing that was rolling down the hill, so to speak, because of some of the animosity and things that COVID caused, or at least the employers caused. But once you compound that with some of the I don't know, some of the byproduct that COVID uh, either incentivized or enabled in terms of office governance or employee management type things, it's essentially created a perfect storm where you've wound up with situations where your workplace is more dysfunctional, people are more antisocial, people are way more stressed and wound up over stuff. Um, I know that where I work, my department, when it's fully staffed, I think is comprised of about maybe somewhere around 15 people. And these past 5 years, we've literally lost more than that in terms of turnover, in terms of like people either quitting or the one or two here and there maybe being fired for whatever stupid reasons. It's really been insane where I work, man. There's just been all sorts of really bad stuff that's been going on, and the scariest part about it is that the current leadership is either oblivious to it or else they're not really given any kind of incentive to change any of it because the boss of their boss of their boss is not really doing anything to fix any of it because he's either unaware of what's going on or else he's so incompetent that he doesn't understand that what's going on is bad. But either way, for the people that are all the way at the bottom of the totem pole like myself, despite the fact that I've been there for about 15 years, it's just created a perfect storm, man. And I've had numerous discussions about this sort of stuff with my immediate manager, and she even knows that I'm looking for another job, or at least until things possibly change where I work, I'm looking for another job. Because I mean, that's all you can do. All you can really do is just keep your options as open as possible to try to prevent calamity. Because another thing that's going on where I work is that they're trying to I think they're thinking about trying to make me report to someone else that's younger, that has less experience, you know. I don't even think the kid makes as much money as I do, but they're somehow thinking that he can manage me to manage the systems that he's been unable to manage. And for whatever it's worth, I mean, the kid that I'm kind of talking about here, he's actually a really good guy. I don't have any personal issues with him. For me, it's just a matter of the fact that I've been there now for 15 years as a full-time staff member, a little more than that. when you consider other roles that I've had throughout my time at this school. And so for me, it's a mixture of things like, being disrespected, not being appreciated, being overlooked, all of the kind of stuff that make people want to fucking quit the place. So naturally, I've been doing everything I can to kind of keep my options open, and to keep my eyes open on opportunities that are within my area of access. And this kind of brings me to another reason that I wound up making a video tonight. I've been keeping my eyes open on jobs in my area. And again, I've said in prior videos that I'm a definite Trump supporter. I love President Trump, man. I know that he's a jackass sometimes, and he says stuff that can be bombastic or generally offensive, and oftentimes the stuff that he says, despite the fact that I oftentimes think that they're funny, me being a more or less right-wing conservative type of guy, even I understand how stupid it can sometimes come across as, things that he says. I mean, he says stuff that can be offensive, and when he doesn't even really need to say those things. And that's the thing that drives me crazy about that man. Even if he does believe the things that he sometimes says that are conceived as or perceived as offensive, there's no reason for him to have to say that kind of stuff. But he does it anyway for whatever reasons. You do the math on that. But my point is that I understand how the guy is, and there's a lot of stuff about that guy that I would love to see change. But politics, like just about everything else in life, it's one of those things where you've got to you've got to assess the least of the poisons. And when it came to balancing the possibility of having a Kamala administration over a Trump administration, for me it made more sense to vote for someone like Trump. And for a number of reasons that go way beyond this discussion. But the reason I'm bringing all this stuff up is because during my time of trying to find jobs or options, I've been looking pretty seriously for the past 6 months, I'd say. And where I live, we have access to basically 3 schools or 3 universities and about 2 hospitals. One university is a state school, another university is a private small school, and the third university is a pretty prestigious engineering school. And as far as the 2 hospitals are concerned, one is a pretty I wouldn't really say it's a successful a successful hospital, but it's definitely the one that's more dominant, because at some point here in the future they're going to get consolidated by the one that's dominant. But there's basically 2 hospitals in my area as well. And out of that 6 months of looking for another job, or at least something that might be a viable possibility, I've literally only found 2. I've only applied to 2 roles. Actually, I can't say that. I've applied to 3 roles, but out of the 3 roles that I applied to, I've only managed to acquire 2 interviews. Which isn't really very surprising considering some of the stories I've seen online by other people that are kind of in similar straits. And the 2 places that I interviewed at, one was a city opportunity. They were needing a WordPress developer, I guess. And the other opportunity was from another university that's within my area. And that, in retrospect, I'm glad I didn't get, because that role was one of 4 that was expected to service an entire institute that had about 1,200 students and anywhere between 300 and 500 staff. So imagine being on a team that totals 4 people, including your role, servicing an entire university like that. And they wanted to hire me on for about, I think it was about 8 or 9 grand less than what I currently make where I am now. And the WordPress opportunity was even worse than that. So I guess I'm bringing all this stuff up because, I mean, it's my opinion at least that things I don't. I mean, I see a lot of stuff on the news about how the economy's doing, and obviously with Trump being in office, they're going to do everything they can to kind of, balloon his accomplishments and everything. And I get it, man. Every regime is like that. Biden did that. Fucking Obama, uh, Jr. did that. They've all done that. Every single time a person is in office, they do everything they can to make it look as if everything's wonderful because that comes back to being accolades on their timesheet. So I get it. But despite me being a Trump supporter, even I'm not stupid enough to think for 1 second that this economy is doing well. In fact, I would even go as far as saying that it's much worse than the 2008-9 recession era. At least if Indeed.com is any kind of measure of how good or bad things are in the world, I'm telling you right now, man, things are not looking good. Because out of everything that I've seen on Indeed.com and other job sites, at least in my area, all I ever see are job opportunities for things like management and director level roles. Otherwise, everything else is either a fake job or some sort of remote shit from fucking whoever out there in wherever stand. you know, with the remaining like 1% being viable, uh, real opportunities that 9 times out of 10 you get ghosted on anyway. So I don't really know where shit is headed, man. And it's getting a little scary as far as I'm concerned because it's never really a problem. Searching for a job in today's world is never a problem until it is your problem. And then it's only at that point when you realize just how fucked up everything is. And I just can't shake this feeling that that's kind of where we are right now with stuff, man. With the stuff that I'm seeing on Indeed.com, Monster, all of them, man. It's none of it is looking good right now. Oh, got a grizzly bear getting pissed off. One second. Gotta be careful with these grizzly bears because they can really screw you up. So anyway, they didn't hit my bot, did they? My foot shattered. Is that Repka? Is that something I need to fix? I wonder. I think it would be. So you can just kind of get by without it. So anyway, for the past 6 months or whatever, I've told myself that either A, I'm going to try to find a job to get out of where I am now, or else B, I'm going to try to spend whatever time I've got to spend keeping my options open with the possibility that maybe things around where I work now might change. And so that's kind of where I am, you know. And like I said, past 6 months, only 2 interviews. And that's within proximity to 3 universities and uh, two hospitals in a town that has, I don't know what the population is, but it used to be somewhere in the 70,000 range. So I just don't know where things are going, man. But I do believe, though, that regardless of who it is that's in office, whether it be Trump, Biden, Kamala, Bush Jr., whoever, it seems to me as if no matter who's in office, it's almost as if this is always an issue, and each regime it gets worse. Now, I think Trump has got it in his mind that any kind of issues surrounding things like affordability is some sort of Democrat talking point, which is infuriating because even if it was a Democrat talking point, wouldn't you want to reduce costs for your constituency? Obviously, that's a fake question because we all know what the answer to that is. But he's just so in love with trying to find someone to blame for the problems that are going on in the world today. And again, I love the guy. I'd vote for him every single chance I'd have if he could continue running for president. But I'm not stupid though either because I do understand his flaws. I see where his lapses are, and just from my own personal first person perspectives and experiences that I've had for the past, I don't know, basically a year and a half, if not longer, I see the things that he hasn't done. And a lot of it, really, in his defense, can be blamed on the preceding regime, but he's been in office now for I don't know how long now. It's been every bit of a year, hasn't it? I think. And he's still wanting to always blame Biden for everything, and he's always wanting to blame the lunatic left and all this stuff. And he's got a lot of leg to stand on with a lot of those accusations. But on the same hand, too, I wish he would just shut up already and just fucking do things that it takes to make more jobs, to stabilize or lower costs, and to just try to find a way to unite the country. Because we still, despite the fact that he's in office and despite the fact that we've done a lot of good things, or at least that he's done a lot of good things, there's still an enormous amount of divide in this country. And I mean, I'm not normally somebody that worries a whole lot about that kind of shit, and even now I still don't a whole lot, at least. But there are some reasons to be a little concerned about some of that type of polarization, however you want to even describe it, man. Polarization, divide, animosity, I don't know what, but it does kind of suck though when you feel like you've got to worry about how you explain something to someone or describe a thing for fear of coming across as if you're somebody that they hate. Because I feel like that all the fucking time, man. Especially where I work. With me working at basically a liberal arts institution, I'll sometimes go out on lunch break, just walking around campus, just to kind of get away from the office, to try to find a way to clear my mind, to try to, I don't know, separate myself from the everyday worries that I personally struggle with each day, and just get some fresh air. And even when I do that, I feel like if you look at someone for too long as you're walking past them or something, you're liable to come across as if you're like psychologically challenging them. And you got to be careful about what kind of clothes you wear, because if you wear certain collars, or especially stuff with political memes on them or something, it's like you're wanting to instigate some sort of exchange with someone. And I guess when I'm in a good mood, I can kind of handle that stuff a little better than I can whenever I'm in a bad mood. But like for example, today, with the stuff that's been going on with my truck, or at least stuff that's been going on around work or whatever, I feel like I'm a little less sociable. And so whenever I'm out and about walking around or doing something, I'm much more reserved and isolated. And sometimes what I'll do is whenever I'm in that mode, I'll try to go over into our student union building and just kind of sit there at one of the benches or tables or something, and just kind of listen to my music, because I've got some like wireless headphones and a little MP3 player that I often listen to. And what I normally do is I'll just kind of sit there and kind of almost meditate to some of my music, and just kind of people watch. I obviously don't do it to the extent that people think I'm weird or something, but I'll just kind of watch the goings on with everything. Look at some of the clothing styles that are being used. Look at who all's working the various restaurants that are in the union building. Watch some of the janitors doing their things. Uh, Looking at some of the student stands that are kind of in operation, because we sometimes have little student events and things like that some of the sororities or the fraternities sometimes set up. They'll sometimes pass out, I don't know, literature about certain events or whatever. And it's just, I don't know, man. It's just one of those things where you're almost kind of like in a shopping mall, just kind of watching stuff, seeing the world. And whenever I'm sitting there watching all that stuff, listening to my music and everything, it kind of helps me meditate to some extent, at least to the extent that I can sometimes put behind me some of my anxiety and stuff that I spend all day worrying about all the damn time, whether it be stuff with my job or my car or my truck or house or fucking whatever. But I've noticed that even whenever I'm in that kind of mode and watching all of those people and doing all the stuff that I do and watching them do all the stuff that they do, it's at least weird for me because it goes without saying when you're a guy that's sitting in there watching these kids walking around or these restaurant people doing the things that they do with your headphones on, I don't like to admit it, but I'm sure that I come across as a little bit of a weirdo. But even whenever I know for a fact I'm not coming across as a weirdo, I still watch these people and see just how isolated everyone is. Because all you got to do is just watch everyone, and you'll see almost all of them sitting there poking away at a phone or poking away at a little thing. None of them are really, none of them really kind of come across as sociable. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, the majority of them, you can see them having conversations most of the time, or at least some of the times. But most of the time, I think you'll usually see them sitting at a table poking away at a phone, and it's like that all the time. And if you go outside and walk around on the sidewalk and observe how everyone is, it's the same thing outside too. It's like they're walking around with their thumbs on a device, looking down at it. And I know for a fact that some of that's contributing to this divide that we have anymore because we all know that they're probably looking at websites that are like Reddit, for example. They're probably looking at Reddit website pages or something, or subreddits where some sort of political discourse is going on, or just some sort of echo chamber of some kind. And I know that, at least with me personally, whenever I'm walking around seeing all this stuff going on, man, the level of loneliness that I feel is just insane. And it really is a struggle. And I don't I imagine some of it is just my age because I'm getting now towards around 43 years old, and some of these, I don't know, what are they, Gen Z alphas, whatever you call them, they're all at an age now to where I guess they're experiencing the type of lifestyle that I always remember my little brother going through whenever he was first introduced to things like a PlayStation. Because you could not pry that kid off of that goddamn thing to save his soul. He had to play computer games, or he had to play, I remember back in the day he was always crazy about Metal Gear games, and I don't know, man, fucking whatever. But he was always on a thing, he was always playing a thing. And sometimes I look at the Gen Z, the alphas, and all that stuff, and it comes across a lot in the same way. It's like they're glued to their phones and their little devices and stuff, and they don't really see the world that's going on around them. And it really sucks because it contributes to a lot of the loneliness that I'm sure everyone feels, at least to an extent. And I say that with them in mind, but also from the standpoint that the older you get, the harder it is to maintain friendships because a lot of the people that you were friends with have usually moved on to things like marriages and partners, and half of them are usually focusing on their own jobs and things like that. And so I guess all I'm saying here is that we live in a very, very lonely world right now. And I know that IT or computers and websites and things like that, devices, it's all contributing to a lot of it. And I don't know how we're ever going to get past it. And my hope, I guess, is that it turns out to be one of those kinds of things that it just has to kind of run its course. Maybe one of these days we'll wake up and everybody just kind of realizes that they're tired of it, and they just begin to try to move on revisit or return to that type of normalcy that a lot of people my age back in the 90s felt whenever people were, I don't know, sociable or had parties. I don't know, man. Had malls still, shopping malls. But all of this stuff, man, at least with me personally, the vehicle woes, the stresses with the workplace and the job stuff, and just seeing society the way it is right now, man, it's one of those things where it's led me to really need beer. Or at least for me, I don't really drink beer, or actually I don't drink beer. The thing I usually drink is like these little cocktails and the occasional bottle of wine, or the occasional bottle of mead, to be precise. Because I've managed to get myself into a situation where I sometimes brew my own or ferment my own mead, honey mead, raspberry honey meads, stuff like that. It's actually pretty good, but you really kind of need to practice it because if you don't do it right, you can sometimes give yourself some gut problems. But that and like I said, the occasional cocktail stuff. Because like right now, for example, I've got an open container of stuff called White Claw. It's basically a hard seltzer. And before that, I had two tiny cans of, I can't remember what it was called, but it's like a carbonated type of wine. It's really, really good. It tastes like a carbonated Welch's. I think I might have mentioned something about this uh, in one of my last videos. But then, I don't know, there's a Bahama Mama can of stuff that I drank too. So, here we go. Wasn't clicking. But it's just all this stuff, the stuff, this stress, this anxiety, this fucking mess where sometimes I feel like I've got to come home and just sometimes get drunk, but most of the time just at least have something to kind of calm my nerves. And the older I've gotten, the more I've begun to understand why people through human history have resorted to drinking alcohol. I understand it now. It's because of all this shit, this everyday fucking crap, where they've got to like they've just got to find a way to unwind, man. And I know that with me, man. I mean, I can get by without alcohol or any of that type of shit, man. I don't have to fucking drink it, but it's something that I've kind of enjoyed lately because of some of the stuff that I've gone through. It does help me kind of loosen up and relax a little bit. But I think it becomes a problem whenever you can't either handle it or it becomes more of an addiction, or like alcoholism and that type of shit, because I've seen that stuff firsthand. My mother was a really bad alcoholic, and in retrospect I think it was because she was always trying to use alcohol to kind of distance herself from the underlying psychological issues that she never dealt with, whatever those things may have been. But I don't know, man. I just know that the world right now, or at least this country, it's I mean, call me crazy, but and I'm not blaming Trump. I'm not even really blaming Biden, despite the fact I can't stand that guy and his regime and everything that they caused. But whatever it is that's going on in this country, if not the world, I just feel like there is a lot of shit right now that's going south, and in really, really, really bad form and fashion. And I think right now, despite the fact that you're not really getting a lot of reasons to suspect it in the news right now. I mean, there's the occasional thing about job losses or layoffs and stuff like that. But in my opinion, I think things are much worse than what the news is leading us to believe, and in different ways. I mean, back in '08 and '09, companies were laying off left and right. I even lost my job, my first career job, back in I think it was '08, back when the whole recession shit first hit the fan. I remember the place I was working at the time. They went through multiple layoffs, and I missed the first round of layoffs, but unfortunately, I wound up biting the bullet on the second one. And in retrospect, I'm actually happy it happened because I fucking hated that place. I had no justification to be working there, man. The only reason I got the job at that place is because I had some some friends at the time that were working there, and they kind of helped me get my foot in the door. But back then, though, whenever that shit was hitting the fan, um, not only were companies laying people off left and right, but they were also going through some hiring freezes. And I think the difference between today and back then is that I don't know. I guess I kind of have to think about it. But I think right now, at least from everything that I've experienced, is that places are doing hiring freezes, and a lot of them are doing layoffs as well. But the majority of the opportunities that I see on things like LinkedIn, or not LinkedIn, but Indeed.com and some of those other job sites, they seem to be mostly trying to get managers and directors. And I guess the only thing that I can extrapolate from that is the fact that you've got a lot of employers who are getting by with skeleton crews, and some of them, the few that are out there hiring, are trying to get a leadership tier installed, I guess. I don't really know exactly what that might mean, but one thing I do believe is that I do think that there's a lot of employers out there that are trying to justify things like layoffs by blaming AI. And I don't think I mean, I use AI at work all the time. Like, for example, I think I mentioned this in my last video. I'm in the process of trying to slowly start working for myself. You know, I've got some ideas about a political type of website that at some point I'm going to start using to do things like have live streams on, or do stuff like that. You know, the kind of Tim Pool slash whatever type of thing. I want to try to get involved in that type of stuff. But I've told myself that before I can do that, or before I want to do that, I want to try to get things squared away with security related stuff where shared hosting is concerned. And so I've been trying to use ChatGPT to help get me started on that type of stuff. And for whatever it's worth, man, it has been super helpful. I mean, it has been insanely helpful. Oh damn, we've got all sorts of animals down here. It's been really insanely helpful from the standpoint of helping me code certain things, and architecturally lay things out on the system, or the systems that I'm working on. So from a standpoint of technicalities, it has been insanely helpful. But here's the thing that I've noticed out of using ChatGPT, at least. It's insane how often it lies to you. And I don't mean lie as in, like, trying to be malicious. What it does is it'll tell you that it knows for a fact that the suggestion it's about to give you is going to fix the given problem that you're dealing with, only to follow that respective suggestion to a T and realize that it doesn't even remotely work. But yet it still constantly reinforces what it's about to give you with authoritative types of perspective. It'll say things like, I 100% guarantee that this thing will fix the thing that you're dealing with. I promise you it'll work, blah, 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 only to do that thing and it not work. And there's been a few times when I would catch it not writing code correctly, or maybe glossing over something that a first or second year coder would have caught. Because I do a lot of coding where I work, and I specifically work in things like PHP and specifically web technologies. I do a lot of server maintenance and IIS type stuff too, but a lot of the stuff that I personally try to do, at least whenever I can, is specifically PHP and content management through Drupal stuff, because that's always been where my passion's been. And it's very transferable too, so whenever I'm doing stuff at work, it can kind of dual purpose as stuff that I can also apply to my personal website type stuff. So I kill multiple birds with one stone by doing it that way. But anyway, whenever I'm sitting there working on that stuff, there's been multiple times when it would suggest an approach to a thing that either contradicts what the standard Drupal way of doing a thing is supposed to be, or will gloss over something that the Drupal API documents will explain is not the way that you're supposed to do a thing. There's a lot of lapses with AI, and so when you hear headlines about how AI is going to do this and AI is going to do that, and it's going to it's going to devastate entire industries, and oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I'm telling you right now, man, don't get me wrong, there are going to be some job losses from AI, but not as much as a result of AI just being this wonderful thing as much as it is just simply bullheaded employers that are going to do everything they can to squeeze the round peg through the square hole, or the square hole. How does it go? Square peg through the round hole. In other words, they're going to try to push AI. A lot of them will try to push AI to the extent that they don't care if it makes sense to use it or not. I see some of that shit already where I work, where it's not really AI, but it's like a tool. Some 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 leader or person in a leadership role will try to push a tool, and not because the tool is actually going to make anything better, just because they want to try to find a way to justify the expense of the tool that they thought was going to do a thing, only to later realize that it's not going to do the thing that they want, but they still have to justify the expense that they committed to in their budgets. And I feel like a lot of that AI type of shit is going to wind up being a lot like that. Okay, let's do this, man. And one thing with this colony that I always try to do is take advantage of these opportunities whenever I have a lot of uh, game out here to hunt, because we've got a lot of mouths to feed. One second, I can't tell if it's actually queuing things. I think it is. But man, for me, man, it's just been I don't want to say that it's been a rough day. It really hasn't. It's actually been a pretty damn good day for the most part. But with the truck and, just worrying about all these things, because now I'm kind of wondering at some point that I'm going to wind up having to just simply say fuck it and get a new truck or something at some point. But also worrying about things that are going on at work, worrying about things with the house, or just whatever, man. It's like every day is kind of a battle. And I know that what scares me is that in my area where I live in Indiana, it's literally one of the best, most affordable types of places that one can live in the entire U.S. And despite the fact that I don't really feel like I'm struggling financially with anything, I'm actually sitting pretty well as far as finances are concerned. There's always still that creeping despair or dread that at any point in time, either something could happen to your job or some sort of emergency can happen that can wipe away all of your savings. And it's always just scary. And it leaves you in constant states of anxiety and fear. And so I guess that ultimately that's one of the biggest reasons I made a video tonight, is because when you're sitting around worrying about stuff, it obviously doesn't do anybody any good to sit there and worry about things. And so it always winds up being better to talk about it, I guess, even if it is just to the random internet, or maybe nobody, in the event that nobody even listens to this. I don't know, but either way, man, it's always good to kind of talk about things. It at least gives you an opportunity to vent. But I know I've got it better than a lot of people out there in the world, and that's what scares me, because I think there's an awful lot of people out there in the world that are really struggling. I mean, big time, to the point to where they're either like homeless or something like that. And it just really makes you wonder where shit is headed if it's like that. Like, for example, I during some of my experiences so far where I am in terms of trying to find a different job and all this kind of stuff, um, it's kind of gotten me to a habit of going to Reddit to look at some of those kind of funny subreddits like anti-work and I hate my job. You know, some of those subreddit type things. And what's scary is that every single day there is somebody out there somewhere that's talking about the same kinds of stuff that I feel like I go through. And in a way, it's because of that that it's somewhat therapeutic, I guess. But the number of the sheer volume of people that you see posting things like that, man. I mean, anybody with any sense is going to understand that you can sit there and try to blame it all on bots or something all you want, but I really don't think, man, that all of those people are bots. I just don't. I think there's a lot of stuff there that needs to be taken seriously. I don't know. It's just me, I guess. That was a pretty awesome hunt. Yeah, I hunt. Screw it. Just do it. Anybody else will be able to haul any of this. Well, anyway, tomorrow is Friday, thank God. And one of my first things, assuming that I can get the truck started and get it out of my garage, I'm gonna try to hit up my Advanced Auto Zone or auto parts place to see if they've got a battery upgrade, and hopefully that'll, if I can get one for about 300 bucks anymore, which fucking sucks. I can't believe you got to pay about $300 for a fucking battery. But if I can get one and install that and it has better cold cranking amps, I'm hoping and praying that that somehow helps the whole situation. I guess we'll see though. But anyway, if you listen to all this, hats off to you. I know this isn't probably the type of thing that you want to sit here and listen to. I know that's. I know there's probably plenty of other things you'd rather do than listen to some rando bitching and complaining about life. But you know, it's just right now. That's just the way this channel is, I guess. I could sit here and talk to you about all the stuff that I'm doing in this game, but anybody who's come to this channel looking to see somebody play Rimworld is already going to know how Rimworld is played. There's nothing really new about it. You just got to do everything you can to feed your livestock and balance all the stuff with the crops and food and everything else just kind of falls in place. So anyway, I think I'm going to end this video here. Thanks for listening to me bitch and complain. If you have anything to kind of offer, any insights, any comments, whatever, definitely leave them down in the comments. Love to hear from you. See what you think about stuff. See if you're, more importantly, I'd love to know if you're kind of seeing the same kind of stuff that I'm seeing. I know that I'm not the only person that sees this sort of shit, man. I mean, I've seen plenty of exchanges online by other people that have all noticed the same, you know, the same sort of social phenomenon. You know, the same kinds of anxieties in people, the same kinds of isolation in people, cost anxieties, job anxieties, all of this stuff with anxiety. I know that everyone else out there is experiencing this shit. And it kills me that there's not more people discussing it. And I guess that's one of the many reasons that I decided to make a video tonight, is just to see if there's anybody out there that's kind of feeling the same shit. So if you are feeling the same kind of stuff, I'd love to hear from you. So definitely leave your insights in the comments below. And I don't know, man. Hopefully things fall into place for all of us, and stuff just kind of settles down at some point. So anyway, have a good Thursday night. I don't know when I'll make another video. Maybe tomorrow, it may be a week from now. I just don't know. Um, but in any event, stay safe, stay warm, and I'll catch you whenever I catch you again. Later.